All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us to learn about aACE's receiving app. My name is Shannon Cook, Vice President here at aACE Software, and today you'll be hearing from Brian Voll, our Vice President of Product Development. A few more details: these webinars are presented as is without any editing. It is being recorded, and after this meeting, we will send you a link so that you can download the recording. All participants are muted, but if you'd like to ask a question about what you see, please do so at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter, Brian, and you can share your screen and jump in when you're ready.
Very cool. Thanks, Shannon. So as Shannon just mentioned, today we're going to be talking about the aACE receiving app. So this is the companion app to our pick app, which we've got another webinar on. We're not going to talk about that today, but you can check that out at showme.asoft.net. So whereas pick app is designed for your warehouse team members to fulfill your customers' orders, the receiving app is designed for when your vendors' deliveries arrive at the warehouse and they need to be unloaded. Before we start, I'd like to note that our sample company is called aACME Educational Solutions, and they sell educational technology, resources, and programs for students, teachers, and school administrators. So the test data that we're playing with today are going to be things pertaining to schools, such as textbooks and educational supplies and electronic whiteboards and such. So let's jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Cool. Can you see my screen?
Sure can.
Let me tidy up this window here. All right. So the first thing I want to do is just review some of the data that I created yesterday to just sort of queue up this demo. There are a lot of procurement-related features in aACE that we cover in other webinars and help guides, so we won't cover that today. We just want to kind of take a quick look at some POs and some orders just to see how some of the data flows through aACE before it gets into the receiving app. So the first thing I want to do is just in aACE from my main menu, I'm going to jump over to accounts receivable and purchase orders and just do a quick search. Some of this is the data I was playing with. Just going to do a quick search for open POs. Now, you'll notice kind of right off the bat that some of these POs have already been received. They're still open because maybe they haven't been purchased yet, maybe you haven't paid for them yet, but they have been received. So these items are actually not going to show up in my pick app, right? Because the information that your warehouse team has available to them, you just want to kind of silo them into the absolute essential data. You don't want to overcrowd them with information that they don't need or give them information that's sort of inapplicable in the moment. We really don't want to clutter their workflows at all. But just a quick overview of some of these features. This is the column that we're kind of looking at when we're talking about items that have been received or have therefore not been received. So we've got a bunch of POs in here. A lot of them are already received. So let's sort of zero in on the data that is going to be accessible to the warehouse team when they start receiving these items. So if I actually go into details here and go into purchase order items, I've got a quick find here down in the footer called Find Items to Receive. This is a much smaller list, right? So now we're really only playing with the data that is essential to this particular workflow. And then, of course, I can jump to related POs. So now we're back in the POs module, but now we're only looking at a small subset of POs that do need to be received. So again, these are the items that the warehouse team is going to be expecting to receive from vendors. And so this is really all they're going to see. If I sort by type here, PO type, we've got a mix of different types of POs. So a lot of these are inventory replenishment POs. So this is the system seeing that we're low in stock for certain items or out of stock for certain items. And so it's automatically generating POs so that we can fulfill those inventory requirements. Now, got tons of documentation on the automated inventory replenishment. I do like to point out that we're never going to generate a PO and automatically send it to a vendor. We always want a human to review that before it goes to a vendor. But it is definitely a really robust feature set to check out when you have a second. We've also got a handful of order fulfillment POs. What this means, if we just take a quick look at that order, I've set up these orders to be, special ordered. Special order in aACE means I'm going to acquire it. I'm going to get it from a vendor and use it for this particular PO. Again, tons of documentation covering a lot of these features. I just want to point them out because it's a great opportunity to point out some good features that aACE has. So if I take a look at my notes, let's close out of some of these windows. Next, we're going to move into the app. Does anybody have any questions before we do that? I do not see any. Cool.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So before we crack that app open, I do want to point out that the mobile apps are built in FileMaker and designed to be deployed on an iOS device using FileMaker Go. So with that said, I am running this on a Mac. It's intended for an iPad or an iPhone. Obviously, it's easier to demo this on my desktop, but you do have that capability to run this on an iPad or an iPhone. The app can also be run offline if necessary. So if you don't have a good Wi-Fi connection, for example, in the back of a semi-truck, right, you're going into the truck to unload these items, you can run it offline and you won't get stuck. The last thing is I do have a Bluetooth scanner connected to my Mac here. So that is going to come in handy when we're doing like serialized inventory. For example, we'll see that later in the webinar. It's not required, but it does speed up some of that data entry, depending on what kind of products you're receiving. So with that, let's crack open the app. And here it is. So when I open the app, I'm starting with a blank slate, right? If we pretend for a moment, right, that the semi-truck has pulled into my dock, I'm going to know who the vendor is. They're going to tell me who they're delivering from. So let's just go ahead and select my McGillicuddy McGuire Hall vendor. If I did have a specific PO number, I could input that here. In this case, McGillicuddy just has the one PO, so it pops up that one item. There are certain vendors you might order a lot of product from, and therefore you might have a lot of open POs with them, and they're sending them in pieces. So if you do have the PO number, you could input it there. Again, McGillicuddy just has that one PO. It's just got that one item. It's got that one textbook on it. One important piece of information you might notice is that this popped up, this WH-1C. What is this? This is actually the bin, the inventory bin that aACE has been configured for this particular product, right? You might have a big warehouse with lots of shelves and different sections for different products. As you're unloading these products, you want your warehouse to know where to put those products. So let's just take a quick little pause of the app and jump back into aACE just to see where that shows up. So if I jump back to the main menu and go into order setup and line item codes, line item codes is basically any portal anywhere in the system that has a line. Line items is established here. So this is products and things that you're buying and selling and whatnot. But the one we want to take a look at here is the TV-LIT 102. That's the textbook. I'm going to click into the detail. I'm going to take a look at the inventory management. And right here, this is the default bin. So here within the system, every single product you have, you can tell it where in the warehouse it should live. And with that setup in place, that means your warehouse, both on the pick side and the put up side, the receiving side, knows where that product lives. And so, the warehouse people, they're going to unload the semi-truck. They're going to know exactly where to put these complete works of Shakespeare. They're going to go right over to that warehouse -1C and put the product there. And then again, on the flip side, when someone orders this product, right, they can go to that shelf and they know exactly where that lives. Okay, so let's close out of that window. Let's hide aACE, jump back to the app. I apologize for some of this jumping back and forth. Obviously, your users aren't necessarily going to be doing that, but it is important in the context of a demo, just to know where certain things live, so that when you set this up for yourself, you know where the different pieces of data live, so you can get it all set up properly for the most efficient workflows in the warehouse. Okay, so McGillicuddy, we're going to go ahead and receive 80 of them. So we're unloading this truck and we're like, oh, you know what? They didn't actually send us all of it. They only sent us 40 of them. So we're only going to receive 40 of them, right? A pretty common workflow. A lot of other systems don't support that. Some systems really just let you receive that which you have ordered. But in this case, we're going to let you split that up as necessary. Maybe they're going to send the rest of that shipment next week. Maybe they got back order items and they're just sort of behind. Who knows? But there are tons of circumstances in which you aren't going to receive a full item, and we'll just sort of receive that when we get there. You might notice this split item pops up. Forget that for now. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. That's a really cool feature. But for now, we're just going to receive these 40 items. I'm going to click this review button. So this basically takes the items that I have received and gives me sort of a consolidated list of that. So you can imagine maybe you've got a PO with 10 items and you've received 5 of them and you really just want to consolidate that list for a quick review, make sure the numbers are correct. Okay, this is all looking good. Maybe you've got a packing list. At that point, I can click this button here. And if I'm on my device, I'm going to get the camera, but I'm going to just go ahead and select a packing list that I downloaded to my machine. We'll see the total units here. That's just one last review to make sure that the numbers are right. And then I'm going to mark this as received.
Hey, Brian,
Cool.
what are those push pin icons utilized for? I see 2 of them.
Well, you are just jumping ahead in my demo.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Push pins are all notes. So we can go ahead and enter some notes here. Actually, here's a good example. McGillicuddy, let's say they only sent us 40 of the 80 on order. We're only receiving the 40 into inventory, right? So that's a good example of something that we might want to capture at the time that the receiving occurred. And we can see all of where this shows up in aACE. So we're going to go ahead and mark as received. Is that okay, Shannon?
Yes, it looks great.
So let's go ahead and mark this guy as received. It's going to do some thinking, and then we are going to jump back into aACE and see what happened. Okay, so if I go back into my main menu, order management, shipping log, let's just do a search for today's shipments. This is the McGillicuddy McGuire Hall incoming shipment. We can see that was an incoming shipment here. If I click into the detail, incoming shipment, Shannon's notes are showing up here. So they only sent us 40 of the 80 on order. We only received 40 into inventory. That's very cool. You can see the quantity here. That was 40. We can see it's tied to the PO. If I click over to the PO, jump over to the management tab, we can start to see the status of this purchase order and where it is in the overall workflow. This is also where I would enter, my vendor invoice when and if they send it to me. Sometimes you have to follow up with vendors. But lastly, you can also see that packing list. So this icon turned teal. And if I click this paperclip icon, you'll see this paperclip all throughout the system as well. I can view the packing list that I took a picture of when I was on my device. All right. Any questions on that particular part of the workflow? We'll do a little bit more complex receiving here in a minute, but I just want to take a little pause here and see if anybody has any questions on what we've seen so far.
Nothing yet.
Very cool. All right, so next, let's go back to the app. Let's hide you. Let's open up our receiving app. Let's do a little bit a more complex one. So I don't know if you remember, if we rewind, go back in time, Aperture was one of our vendors that had like 3 or 4 different POs. Let's receive some goods from them. They just sent us a shipment. So I'm going to go here, type in AP to get my list, aperture, cool. So here are the different POs that we have with them. Now I obviously don't have to receive all of them. Maybe they sent me pieces of them. Another real life scenario, right? You might have a lot of goods to be received from a specific vendor. They might be batching different orders in one shipment. And so you want to receive all of that in real time, in real life, just so you have that captured as it's reflected in real life. So we've got these three POs. Let's go ahead and start with the first one. They sent us a bunch of student tablet 8-inch cases. We've got the bin that we're supposed to be placing them into, this WH-D2. So now the warehouse team knows exactly where these items need to go. So they're going to unload these cases. They're going to go to that shelf. And what happens if there's no space? Okay, cool. So we've got space for 10 of them. So I'm going to enter 10 going against that WD or WH-2D. That's where this split item feature comes in. How cool is that? So I'm going to split this item and I'm going to say, all right, well, the shelf just next to it has space. So I'm going to put it in my WH1C. And I'm going to put all 30 there because I've got space for that now. If I needed to split it multiple times, I could do that as well, right? Maybe I just need to kind of put them all over the warehouse just because we're low on space. Who knows? But you do have that capability here to now just say, all right, I'm going to take this one item and I'm going to split it into multiple items because they need to go to different places. Cool. The next thing that they sent us is this electronic whiteboard refurbished. You might notice that the bin here is actually a QA, right? It's a refurbished whiteboard. I want to make sure that it's working before I put it into inventory. So the bin that I'm putting this into is my QA bin. Now in aACE, I've actually configured my QA bin to be non-nettable. Now what that means is I can put it into my inventory system so that I have it I have record of it, right? I know it's there and I know where it is. It's in my QA bin, but it's not yet available to be sold. So it's not going to show up as available inventory when my order writers go draw up orders until I go through that QA process. Okay, this is good. Let me transfer it into an actual bin. I'm going to put it in the warehouse wherever it belongs. The other thing to point out here is that it is a serialized item, right? So my icon changed from a regular old, I didn't want to do that. Let's get rid of you. Clear. I don't want you. It's a serialized item. So my icon changed. And if I click you, now I have the opportunity here to enter the serials for this particular product. Of course, I can, key that in, but of course that's going to take too long. That's where my handy dandy Bluetooth scanner comes in, and I'm going to go ahead and scan the serial. So you can imagine getting maybe a whole pallet of, I don't know, laptops or whiteboards or whatever, and you just kind of go through and you scan just to put them into inventory and associate the right serial number to each of those units. So that's a serial for my white bin, or my whiteboard. It's going to go into QA. Before I go into the next step, and this is a pretty quick demo, which is nice. We want to kind of make sure that the workflow is quite as efficient as possible. So I'm not surprised we're coming in quite short. But with that in mind, if you do have any questions, kind of get those organized right now and let me know just so we don't cut you off. So I've got my items to receive. I've got my cases split. I've got my serial entered, and I can review it, and I can just sort of get a sense of what's going on. Multimedia projector, we didn't actually receive any. I did accidentally input that, so I want to get that. It still said 0. It wouldn't have done anything, but I want to clean up this packing list for myself. You can see this item has been split among 2. This is a great place to put notes. So here we can say, you know what, there wasn't enough space on WH. Anyone remember what it was? D? 2D.
Close.
So we put 30 units onto WH.
1C.
1C?
1C.
Uh,
I got you, don't worry.
this would not be a problem if I was standing in front of that shelf and it was labeled. Um,
True.
okay, cool. So I've got my serialized item. I've got my cases. It's all split up. That's all very cool. I'm going to do one more check. I've got 41 units, right? 10, 31. Awesome. Mark is, oh, let's add a packing list just for kicks. Packing list number 2. Bam, bam, bam. Mark is received. And then we're going to jump back into aACE and see what happened. Let me hide this just so we don't distract ourselves. Okay, back into shipping log. Let's take another look at today's shipments. That was the first one we looked at. This is the second one for aperture. Everything looks good, right? So I've got my tablet split into 2 different bins with the appropriate quantity. And then I've got my serialized item that has come in from that receiving app, right? So now if I'm an administrator or if I'm an aACE user sitting at my desktop working in aACE rather than the app, I kind of have a full picture of everything that's going on here, right? I can take a look at that packing list that someone scanned into that app and uploaded with that incoming shipment, right? I can also kind of click to these different purchase orders and I can see the status of each of them, right? So it has not yet been purchased, but it has been received. It's been fully received, right, across those 2 shipments, or rather that 1 shipment. Yeah, and so here we are. We can just kind of get an overview of how this whole workflow works. So that pretty much is everything that I wanted to show you today, right? We can create those POs based on what we need from our vendors. We can pass that information along to the warehouse team, give them an app. They can just crack it open when the semi truck arrives or the U-Haul truck. I don't know how you receive your um, shipments, your vendor shipments, and then they can scan in items. They can do their counting. We can do QA. We can do all of that right here within that mobile device.
Yeah, and then this was a nice demo because you saw the workflow for the user that's in the warehouse. But then for those that are in the back office, they saw what the workflow also looks like through the main application on their desktop. So you have 2 sides of the world and how are you accessing all the points. And I will say I love the notes feature simply for, if you have product coming in and there's any damage to them or anything like that, right? You can notate them and that makes your office's job a lot easier to like follow up on claims regarding goods that were shipped that either may not be right or may be damaged and things like that. So it's a great opportunity to capture it live and speed up that process. So it's a good thing that the system has.
Very cool. I don't see any questions, so I think we can wrap up for the day.
Great. So let me reshare my screen and I will take us out. Okay, so if you are interested in looking into any of the additional webinars that Brian mentioned, you can visit our website, showme.asoft.net, where you can browse our library of previously recorded webinars. All right, everyone, so that's all for today. Before we wrap up, I'd like to thank all of you for attending and sharing your questions during the presentation. You will get a link to this recording so that you can watch it again or share it with colleagues who couldn't join us today. If you think of any questions we didn't cover, you can always reach out to us at support@asoft.com and we'll be happy to get you an answer. You can also sign up for future webinars at acesoft.com/webinars. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.